Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about engagements in TVZ, specifically engagements if you're below diamond, and then engagements when you're diamond and above. Okay, so they're going to look a little different. So it's important to you can't just listen to one part of it and be like, it's the same for the next part. Like they're actually pretty different on how I would approach engagements. This is a replay from DreamHack Dallas, Maru vs. Solar. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this yet, but Maru played some crazy with air quotes, right? Some pretty out of maybe pocket builds like CC first, quick double E base, stuff like that. Stuff you probably wouldn't feel too comfortable doing on ladder. So that's why I haven't done any build order guides on those builds just yet. But I did want to talk about engagements because this has been like a theme as of late in some of my coaching sessions, specifically, funny enough, TVP engagements, but then kind of sort of now trickling down to TVZ as well. I've been working with a student of mine who has been grinding TVPs and has actually gotten significantly better after kind of getting down on the engagements and focusing strictly on engagements in TVP. So I thought, hey, maybe this kind of concept would also work for the other matchups and for other people as well. So with all of that being said, that's lengthy intro, let's get down to the nitty gritty. So when it comes to TVZ, there's a couple of key principles, I suppose, when it comes to engagements. And this is actually true of any matchup, really. It's going to be, where you engage, the pathway that you take to get to where you want to engage, and then how you set up the engagement, okay? And there'll be general rules of thumbs that you want to avoid, right? For example, you don't want to be below a ramp when you take a fight because it's not very advantageous for you. Generally speaking, of course, there's going to be specific examples where it's fine, but generally speaking, you don't want to be in that position, right? You want to be in a position where maybe it's not too open, ideally where you can choke up units like zealots, zerglings, but also have some space to be able to split if it's against banelings. Marauders in front of your marines if you have marauders, stuff like that, having a concave as well depending on the composition that you're engaging. So there'll be those couple of rules that you want to follow, general rules that you want to follow in any matchup. Okay, now when it comes to actually setting up the TVC engagement, that's where it gets a little bit different. So let me explain here. Now obviously this is looking like a pretty normal game. Zerg ahead on supply, taking a fifth, Maru on 3 bases. Maru is going to be doing an 8 rack, so he'll be pretty much all-inning on 3 bases, right? So we're all-inning on 3 bases. How do we set up this all-in? I know playing builds like this is extremely common. If you're diamond and above, a lot of people like doing these 8 racks builds. Whether it's from a 3cc Banshee opener, CC first, whatever it is, a lot of people pivot to these 8 racks all-ins. But how do you set them up, right? So assuming you get the build down, assuming you get everything set up, right, army composition, no supply blocks, all that good jazz, then how do you actually set up these fights? So in TVZ, no matter the build that you play, the first thing that you want to do is you want to be clearing creep. Okay, now this is maybe more so, this is going to be more so true if you're diamond and above, right? If you're platinum or so, it's good to maybe practice that, but I wouldn't have it as a source of your priority, mostly because it's a bit APM intensive. So if you're not getting your build down properly, you're better off getting the build down properly first than actually trying to get value from clearing creep, okay? Because the value that you gain from clearing the creep would be offset by the fact that you don't have enough APM to do your build right, so now your build's cooked, right? You could clear creep but be supply locked for 3 minutes, and that's not very helpful. So you need to be thinking, when you're analyzing your games, you want to be thinking about the whole picture, okay? You want to be thinking about how, yes, I'm doing one thing that clearly can have some value in doing so, but if I'm sacrificing something else that's getting me more value, I'm better off not sacrificing that to do that. Okay. It's I'm like Pavlov's dog. I just every time I do a video I just yawn. Okay, so Maru, of course, is gonna have the APM to be able to do all that stuff. He's gonna be able, my computer's gonna do that. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so Maru has the APM to do all of that. He's gonna have the APM to do his build correctly, 95-98% accuracy, and then also eke out some value from his pressure, his initial pressure, which is always going to be with these first 2 double medivacs, okay? The days of, okay, this is if you're diamond and above. The days of pushing across the map at 1-1 with Marine Tank at the pro level are pretty dead. Okay, not to say that if you can't win with those kinds of pushes, if you're diamond, below diamond, or anything like that, but if you are above diamond, it'll be harder to do that. Okay, people are just smarter, people are just better. It's a bit easier. They know what they need to do to be able to collapse on that. 1-1 pushes have been a thing for years, like literally years, right? So it makes sense for people to be very well acquainted with defending those. Okay, so what most people do these days is they'll try to eke out value from double medivac pressure. Okay, obviously at the higher levels, this could be 4 medivacs in total with 2 medivacs on each side. But in this case, Maru is going to use 2 medivacs, okay? And what kind of value does he get from here? Well, you know, technically speaking, because there are no Hydras or anything like that, he should never lose these medivacs and probably won't be losing Marines either, right? Too many Marines at least. And with some additional micro, he can target fire some banelings to get some value. But one of the main things that he does is it kind of hugs this terrain, right? So if you need to kite away, so say for example here, we're stimming in, right? We want to cancel his base. In this case, he thinks he can get the cancellation. So what does he do? He kites away from the army into this more narrow point to minimize damage. And then he'll make sure that his medivacs are above his Marines. Okay, he loses a few Marines there. Oopsie daisy. But if we're looking at units lost, he's getting an advantage, right? He killed that base. He's killing lings. He's target firing banelings. He's eking out that value. And then behind that, he's macroing hard to set up his all-in. Now, when it comes to this double medevac pressure, there are like 2 ways to approach it. Your goal is either, your objective is either to trade as much as possible with the Ling Bane and just kill as much stuff, right? Or you clear creep of the path that you're planning to push into. Okay, so in this case, Maru cancels his base. A good Zerg player will then immediately take the base on the other side. And then they'll still try to take this eventually, okay? Now, Maru is going to push now with his upgrade timing. So his build is clearly reliant on this 2-2 upgrade. So once he gets his 2-2 upgrades, he's got his 8 barracks. He's going to go across the map. He's now going to shift his whole army to the other side. Now, this actually kind of makes sense because he's getting so much value from these 2 medevacs here. And he's kept most of the army here. And he's killed this base, right? So if Zerg is going to take the other... It doesn't really make sense to push here. Because he'll push into here. And then he'll go over here. Right? Try to go into the 3rd. But it's going to take a little bit longer because there's all this creep. And while you're doing that, this other base is going to get set up. Right? So then what ends up happening is a good Zerg player, again, if they feel like they cannot take a fight, maybe they're waiting on a timing, they can move these drones to this base and then build another base up here while you're stuck down here. Because ideally, you want to clear the creep, right? You don't really want to take a fight on creep. But because Solar was emphasizing this base location, his creep is going to be a bit better on this side because this was initially the base he was going to take, right? This is the base he was prioritizing to take. This is the first 5th base that he took. So it makes sense for the creep to be a bit better here. Now on this side, the creep isn't as good yet. And also, there's still this, right? So on this side, we can see that this position also exists here, but there's creep, right? And on this side, there is no creep. So not only can he cancel this base or even kill it as soon as it pops up, he can also then position here. Okay, so that's the idea there. Now Solar does have spars, and he barely misses the rotation. So what does this mean for us? Now, Maru would still do the push, but the only thing different that he would do here is he'd probably scan to see where Solar's army is, because clearly he's been spotted, right? In this case, he wasn't spotted. He still scans, which is great. That's a safe choice. Now Solar didn't see the army rotation, so he's caught off guard, and that kill pops off, right? Now he's going to set up his tank push. He's trying to get it in there on this side. That's a great idea. The only thing is, Solar actually got some Vipers out in this game, anticipating a tank push, just from how the series was going. So he's able to shut this down. Now, you look at that and you go, man, why are you showing me this example of it? The reason I'm showing you this is because First of all, nobody you're playing is going to have Vipers at 9 minutes in the game. Okay, for sure. All right, so you'll be fine. Okay. Also, he did clump up all his tanks, so that's going to happen. Okay, but I want you guys to see how you want to position yourself and how you want to rotate your army and approach this, okay? Now, what would have happened there if Maru had been able to get those tanks up is he would have done two things. These are the most important micro tips I can ever give you guys. Simple micro. Target fire banelings with your tanks and run your Marines behind, okay? You don't need to split. You could try splitting, okay? You can try. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but target firing banelings is going to get you more value than trying to split very poorly, okay? Try it. If you don't have more than one army control group, it's going to be hard to do that. That's why I always stress fundamentals, because it helps you with this kind of stuff. Okay, like having more than one army control group. So target firing banelings is a huge game changer, especially if you're able to get sieged up in a pretty nice spot. If you get sieged up here and you target fire banelings going down the ramp, I promise you the fight is going to look amazingly better, like shockingly better than it would be if you don't even try to micro the tanks and you just try to split, because the splits are going to be pretty shit. And 9 times out of 10, there's going to be as many banelings as you have Marines. So it's going to be kind of hard. Okay. Now, Maru's going to start pressuring here. And he's going to lift up those units and fly into the main. This is also something that is extremely important. Okay. Keeping the medivacs close to the bio and keeping the bio together when I said run away behind the tanks, right? If a scenario occurs where you can pick up your units and fly away because your tanks die, that's great. That's exactly what I would do, especially if you feel like you're not going to win a fight. If you keep those medivacs close, you can pick up and boost into the main. You can boost into the main or something like that, right? Depending on where you're fighting, or boost home if you need to boost home. Okay. So now here comes his medivacs, and now he's going to start pressuring. And mostly here what's happening now is he's kind of just abusing the fact that there's no anti-air besides the queens. So it makes it easy to do something like this. If you spot weaknesses like this, especially the lack of anti-air, I highly recommend utilizing big medivac drops into the main. Okay, notice he positions himself in a choke point. He kills as many lings as possible, and then he loads up his units, and then he flies away. Okay. Right? And notice there, those Marines got stuck back there. He boosts the medivac towards the Marines, picks them up, and then runs away. Okay, but the main thing is that he just stays in the choke point, and as soon as the banelings come up and get close, he picks up and he flies away. Okay, I cannot stress that enough. When there are no hydras, even if there are hydras, rule of thumb, kill as many banelings as you can. Banelings come in, pick up, fly away. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, and that's how you get value from trading against Zerg. Okay. And he's got another medevac. And just obviously this is like 400 APM, 500 APM shenanigans. So this is where I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you guys, yeah, do this. It's so easy. Because it's not. Okay. But pretty much that's what he does. He avoids fighting in the middle. If you think about it here, there's not really good tank spots. Maybe unless you get up to here. But then getting up there, it's going to be pretty hard, right? Because you can get surrounded from here. You can get surrounded from here and from here. So it's not really like a... On paper, it looks, at the mini-map, it looks fine because you're just running it down mid, but on paper, it's probably not a good fight to take. Not a good location to take a fight. It's like he's going to re-abuse his tank spot. And so you're looking, when you're moving out with tank pushes, you're looking for positions like this, okay? Obviously, if you have mines, you don't really need to do that because you can just take a fight up front and utilize the mines. But in this case, because he's doing an 8-rack Solon, and as you guys know, 8-rack Solons always have siege tanks, that's why he's playing like this. Okay, so with all that being said, let's talk about what you do if you're below diamond. So when you're below diamond or so, the fights look much different. You actually do want to fight with everything together, and I recommend fighting even down the middle of the map. It's completely fine. Micro is not, you're not so much worried about micro when you're diamond and lower. You're worried about doing your build properly and macroing properly. So my advice there is probably advice you've heard 1,000 times if you're at that level. Macro hard, build up a good army, and then as quickly as you can, go down across the map, take a fight, rinse and repeat. Okay, and that's what you do. You take these big fights, you have enough production, you have enough money, and then you rely on an army that doesn't require too much control. So for example, siege tanks, sure, maybe you have to siege them. So maybe you just want Marine Marauder medivac. Or even Marine Marauder tank is fine, and maybe if you can't, just try to siege your tanks. I think people in Platinum can do that. But you want to have an army that's a bit more A-movie, so that you can just, because your goal is to just remax quicker. If you macro better than your opponent, you win most of the time. So if you're just able to mine more and produce more things quickly, you're able to do those kinds of things faster. Okay, so when it comes to that, something like this big push that Maru does, instead of like going around the edges of the map and all this stuff, you can just, okay, I'm maxed out. Let me go down the middle. You know, I can scan, create some creep. But my goal is to, you know, just take a fight. That's pretty much it. You know, at most, beyond sieging the tanks, maybe Marines behind the Marauders. But you take, at that level, you take more straight up fights against Zerg and Protoss. You kind of just run at the army, and then you try to hit as many abilities as you can. But as long as you have a lot of production, you're macroing during the fight, you'll be able to redo it all over again. That's a really big thing that people underestimate. Is sometimes you lose sometimes you lose a fight kind of bad, but you have the money. You have a lot of money to be able to remax this quickly. So if you have enough production facilities, you can do so. It's only bad when you have all that money, you lose a fight, and you have 4 barracks. You're not going to win, right? Because you can't. Or even sometimes you take a good fight, but your opponent has more production than you, so they can outproduce you, and then your 4 barracks aren't producing enough Marines. Okay, that can happen too. So, but that is pretty much, honestly, like most you need to know if you're Platinum. But that's why I'm saying it's different, because once you get to Diamond above, I feel like you don't want to be doing mid-map pushes like that. You know, on some maps, it might be advantageous. For example, like Persephone, that map in the middle is already a bit narrow as is, so it might be easier to take a fight in the middle like that because it's a bit more choked up naturally. But on a map like this, very open, and Diamond Zergs are more than capable of like spotting you move out and then knowing that they can just A-move you before you siege in the middle of the map. Okay, so that's why I'm saying to avoid that. Do the stuff on the edges here, clear creep in the middle when needed, but rely on this double medevac pressure to set the stage for your push. Okay, and really trade with as many links as you can. Keep those Marines alive and clear creep with that. Okay, that's it. All right, that pretty much covers everything, guys. Hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.